Hello, good morning, and welcome back to St. Peter's in Hove. I'm Father Alexander, and this is our 138th step, 139th step through the Bible, and we're on to the third psalm. Now, the psalms quite often have a little superscription above them, which says, for the choir master, or a psalm of David, and sometimes a little bit more, sometimes even a note of the tune to which it's to be sung. But in this case, in the third psalm, we say this is a psalm of it is said this is a psalm of David written when he was fleeing from his son Absalom. Now you do remember the occasion when he was fleeing from his son Absalom. Now either that is true, literally true, or it's also the case that somebody read this and thought, well, this must be the psalm that David wrote when he was fleeing from Absalom because it fits it so perfectly. And indeed it does. David remember fleeing from his enemies. How many are my foes, O Lord? How many are rising up against me? How many are saying to me, there's no help for him in God? In other words, it looked as though King David's regime had completely collapsed. Not only had Absalom risen up against him, so had Ahithophel, so had all the others, and so on. But you, Lord, are a shield about me, my glory, who lift up my head. I cry aloud to the Lord, he answers from his holy mountain being Mount Zion, the place where the temple is, which is a little indication that this is not a psalm about King David. It's a psalm of somebody or another who is directing a prayer towards the temple, the house of God. And the temple postdates King David. I lie down to rest and I sleep. I wake, for the Lord upholds me. I will not fear even thousands of people who are ranged on every side against me. Arise, Lord, save me, my God, you who strike all my foes on the mouth. You who break the teeth of the wicked, O Lord of salvation, bless your people. So, who is speaking here? Well, one of the things that we no longer do these days is we no longer interpret the scriptures allegorically. Is this an allegory of the death, the passion, death, and resurrection of Christ? He is surrounded by enemies who get him down. I lie down to rest and I sleep. I wake, for the Lord upholds me. In other words, Jesus goes into the tomb and then he arises from the tomb because the Lord upholds him. It's a bit of a stretch, I think, that interpretation. I don't think it's necessarily correct. Rather, what this is this the prayer of the beleaguered man, or it might be the prayer of the beleaguered nation, the whole of Israel. And this man or nation, and Israel means the man who trusts in God, after all, this person has an assurance from God that God is the shield that protects him. God is his glory who lifts up his head. That when I cry aloud, God answers from his holy mountain. Now, one of the things that atheists find most astonishing about Christianity and most mockable about Christianity is the fact that the individual can have a conversation with the Almighty, and the Almighty cares about the individual. In fact, not only atheists, Aristotle, who wasn't quite an atheist, but he was almost an atheist, really, he was practically an atheist, but he was a theist. He believed that the unmoved mover of all things was thought, perfect thought, thinking about perfection, in other words, thinking about himself, therefore quite unable to lower himself to think about human beings. Why on earth would God, so wrapped up in his own beauty, truth, and oneness, so wrapped up in his own perfections, think about creatures as imperfect as us? And the idea to Aristotle that God could love anybody is completely alien, because after all, love is a lack, isn't it? You love those that you need them in your life because without them, you're lacking. And God needs human beings in his life. Well, that seems ridiculous to somebody like Aristotle, and indeed to the deists of the 18th century. There was a God, but he could not possibly be interested in the world's goings on. But here he is. People say this man is finished, this man is doomed, but God, you are a shield about me. You are my glory, and you lift up my head. In other words, God is my protector and my refuge, as it says elsewhere in the psalm. More than this, God is my glory. That is to say, could mean God is my boast, but what it means is that God is the one who glorifies me. And through my relationship with God, I achieve the fullest possible human flourishing. God is my glory. The glory of God is man alive. God glorifies me, and God's glory is seen in human beings, and my glory is seen in my relationship with God. If you took that away, then I really would be just a empty shell. But because I have this relationship with God, that gives me glory. I cry aloud to the Lord. He answers from his holy mountain. There is no silence of God here. God answers from his holy mountain. And indeed, as he's fleeing from his enemies, let's say, he lies down to rest, and I sleep. Now, if you are in grave danger, you can't get to sleep because somebody might creep up on you in the middle of the night and kill you. Remember what happened to King Saul. He wasn't killed, but he could have been when David found him asleep in the camp. When you're asleep, you're most defenseless. But here, God is there to uphold me. I get up in the morning, the Lord upholds me. Now, people who are profoundly depressed find it very hard, I believe, to get up in the morning to face another day. They say, oh my goodness, not another day. I don't think I can face it. We face each day because the Lord upholds us. He is the upholder of our lives. And then, of course, King David or whoever has written the psalm then talks about how his enemies are all going to get it and God is going to break their teeth. We as Christians don't immediately think of God as a tooth breaker of our enemies. Breaking a tooth is a really horrible experience. Can you imagine before dentistry, before modern dentistry arrived? Can you imagine striking all the foes in the mouth, breaking their teeth? Horrific. But of course, he sees God as not just the person who loves him, but also a mighty warrior fighting at his side. So that's the sort of thing that we don't particularly stress in this psalm. And that's why we leave out liturgically all the psalms that are imprecations against our enemies, as we'll see later on. I think this is a beautiful psalm because existentially, and here we go again, the psalms are existential. It shows we have a close relationship with God. We speak to God, he listens to us. He is our glory. He lifts up our head. He is the one who is the guarantor of our safety. Now, you know about guardian angels, and it's very strange that I remember being told about my guardian angel when I was about 5 years old. I was at an excellent school called Stella Maris Convent, Balzan in Malta. And I remember very, very clearly the thing about your guardian angel and that each one of us had a guardian angel. There were about 30 children in the class and each one of us had an angel somehow or another. I thought, my goodness, 30 children in this class plus 30 angels. That's crowd. And quite often when you think about guardian angels, you realize that the spirit world is a rather full one. And it does say, does it not, in the letter to the Hebrews, you've come to the Mount Zion, the city of God, where millions upon millions of angels are gathered for the festival. Now, the question of the guardian angel is, of course, in the Old Testament. We do know about guardian angels from the Old Testament. We do have a sort of guardian angel in the book of Tobit, which we've done. And it talks about the angel standing before him in the various psalms. But here, he's not talking to his guardian angel. His guardian angel is God. God is the guardian. God is the one who's always with us. We are not lonely people. God is with us. I think this is very, very important. I once had a talk from a guy. It was in Oxford a very long time ago. So yes, almost 40 years ago. And this guy talked about atheists, and he'd written a book about atheists. It was called The Unfortunate Body. And there was one bunch of people who went to the Arctic and another bunch of people who went to the Arctic. One lot were atheists and one lot weren't. The atheists all died of cold, but the theists, the believers, the Christians, survived. Despite the fact they had exactly the same conditions, they survived because presumably they were able to make this prayer. And the prayer is an affirmation of faith. You, Lord, are a shield about me, my glory who lift up my head. In other words, in the deepest despair, God will save us. In our most terrible moments, God is there with us. Now, I know, here we go, it's a rather far-reaching reflection. You know, where was God in Auschwitz? He was there in the people who were suffering. He is with the suffering, and he will aid us. Sometimes it's very difficult to see how he does this in practical terms, but we believe very strongly God is with us and he will aid us. A beautiful little psalm, number 3. How many are my foes, O Lord? But, you know, I've got lots of foes. They're all out to get me. sometimes, it's true. They all are out to get you. You're not psychotic. They really are out to get you. But, O Lord of salvation, says the last line, bless your people. The Lord of salvation is with us and he blesses us. All the best. Bye for now.